Michael Malice has a hierarchy of different, I think it's like the hierarchy of grifters.
Don't know why. The moment you say Michael Malice, my face immediately sort of starts to smile.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's like industry plant, paid opposition, controlled psyop.
Yes,
it goes all the way up. And he said that he descended recently. He's not quite at paid opposition, but I think he's industry plant now. I think Lex Friedman is paid opposition.
Paid is different from controlled opposition.
Maybe it's controlled opposition. I don't fucking know.
Controlled opposition is... These are such weird terms that have cropped up in our era.
I love it.
Again, I think they're sort of low resolution explanations for really, really low resolution explanations for things. Whenever I hear somebody describe things as that, I always sort of know that you're not dealing with somebody who actually understands the world.
Do you find there's definitely a trend of conspiratorial thinking, conspiracism, much stronger in our adopted homeland than it is in the UK, I think?
Yes, that's true.
What do you think? How conspiracy pilled are you? Do you see...
I mean, this is the moment when people say, controlled opposition.
You've ascended. This is me allowing you to graduate from...
I think I talked about this on the Boys Cast, that's right. And briefly, and various people wrote to me saying, there you go. That's proof that you're paid.
You're glowing, as it's called.
But what's that?
You heard you're glowing?
No, what's that?
So... Tell me if I'm wrong with this, Mark. You're the resident glow expert, but your glowing means you're like a planted person who's saying something that is outing their it's an intelligence operation that's breached the surface and people can see it. They comment on TikTok saying like you're glowing.
So it's like the people alleged to be FBI who are at certain protests, all wearing chinos and t-shirts,
so you're conspiratorial.
Yeah. Well, so the conspiracy. No, the thing with conspiracy theories is it's very difficult in our era because some of the conspiracies are true, of course, have come true, or known to be true. Lab leak conspiracy theory, probably true. They shouldn't have ever called. Nobody should ever have called it a conspiracy theory because it wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was one of a set of hypotheticals to explain what happened with COVID. So a lot of things get called conspiracy, which are not. They're just hypotheses that should be allowed to remain on the table, and that makes a certain type of person increasingly prone to believe that everything that's called a conspiracy theory is not a conspiracy theory. And before you know it, you get sane-ish individuals thinking that the moon landings were a conspiracy, that we didn't land on the moon, the American didn't land on the moon. I don't know whether the people who now claim that believe that the Russians also faked it. It's an interesting question to ask them. Do you think that the Soviets were capable of getting to the moon, but the Americans were not? The Americans set up like a blow fan and a flag on a dodgy papier-mâché set, but the Soviets did make it? Or did the Soviets and Americans both agree to pretend to have gone to the moon, but not really have gone? None of it makes sense to my mind. But there's but it's, I have noticed, and it's actually all the literature demonstrates this, that there's certain types of mental problems that people have that make them disproportionately likely to believe conspiracy theories en masse. And one of them is paranoia. The more paranoid a person is, the more likely they're to believe that sort of thing. And that's the observation in my own life. I've known a number of people who've gone into the world of conspiracy and not come out, and they are all people who have suffered paranoid episodes in their lives, so which adds up.
So fear engenders...
Yeah, and it's, as I say, it's a sort of low-resolution explanation for complex phenomena. And I think it's also that, see, conspiracy theories come about and are used by people who, and this isn't an original point, many people have made it, they're made, the claims about them are made by and large by people who don't understand how unbelievably chaotic the world actually is, or can't face it. So they can't face the fact that, yeah, somebody you followed in the newspapers every day for all of your life did actually just die in a freak car crash because the driver was drunk. They can't bear the idea. The world can't be that cruel. It can't be that random. You want a bed?
It's got to be
just
coordination. It can't be
startles.
coincidence.
Exactly. So people who can't cope with the wild frivolity of the roulette table of our lives always go to there must be somebody behind it. There must be somebody who's controlling all this. You joking? Nobody's controlling this. If anyone's controlling the damn thing, I'd want to know by now. But of course they're not. So it's a very unsatisfactory place to arrive at in your life. And by the way, my own observation, it's not very good for people personally because they start to lose agency themselves.
Locus of control gets externalized.
Yeah,
I'm at the mercy of the world.
Yeah. And the real answer is the world doesn't care.
No. Doesn't even know that you exist.
It is deaf to you.
The ability for people to hold two conflicting thoughts in their mind at the same time is supposed to be the mark of sophisticated thinking. But it does show up here, which is the government is both so useless that they can't get anything right and so sophisticated that they're able to coordinate.
Oh, that's masses of versions. The Arab world is filled with that. The Muslim world is filled with that. Things like, I've noticed this repeatedly on my travels, things like 9/11 was an inside job of the Americans to allow the Jews out of the World Trade Center. And also, yay, 9/11, good for Osama bin Laden. They can do both. There was somebody I knew interviewed the father of the main 9/11 hijacker. His name's gone out of my mind. I don't care. He should be forgotten. But interviewed the father in Jordan, and he was simultaneously capable of holding in his head that his son was a great shaheed, a martyr for Islam, and that 9/11 was an inside job with the Americans. What the fuck? Like, choose. I mean, do you think your son was an agent of the FBI and also a martyr? Like, hey, people do this. The Muslim world is particularly prone to conspiratorial thinking because it's a source of flattery to itself to explain why they have created so few successful societies. And Bernard Lewis made this point many years ago that the problem in the Muslim world is that they have to find explanations, because if you're given the revelations of Muhammad and you're told it's the last revelation ever from God and that you are the people who have received this revelation and everything's going to go great for you because you've got the revelation, and then like the Jews, you have one country and it does much better than any of your countries, and you can't get the economy of most of your countries going at all, and you can't provide for most of your citizenry, and nobody's coming up the ladder, and the economy's in the dust and all this. You've got to find an explanation for it, because what? We were given the revelation and they're doing much better. So, I mean, there's massive things like that sit underneath the movements of our time, which maybe billions of people on the planet believe. And they believe them because it flatters themselves. It flatters the governments who aspire to run these countries or claim to run these countries. Yeah. Billions of people believe this shit.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Maui Nui Venison. Maui Nui Venison brings the healthiest red meat on the planet direct to your door. Not only is it the most nutrient-dense meat on the planet, they're the only 100% stress-free, wild harvested venison that you can get. Here's my super secret hack. If you are sick of buying meat that always goes off, put it in the freezer from frozen, salt both sides of it, put it in an air fryer for 10 to 12 minutes each side, and you have a perfectly cooked steak from frozen that will never go off because it's going from freezer to mouth in the space of 25 minutes. It's a complete game changer. All of their cuts are spectacular, and you can get them frozen delivered to your door, but their venison sticks are my favorite while I've been on the road. You can get the healthiest red meat on the planet delivered directly to your door and get 20% off by going to the link in the description below or heading to mauinuivenison.com/modernwisdom and using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's MAUINUI venison.com/modernwisdom and modernwisdom at checkout. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip with Douglas, you will love the 2-hour-long podcast episode, which you can watch right here. Go on.